The Seoul series has started between the Dodgers and the Padres, but to be totally honest, no one is talking about that game. As overnight, reports came out saying the Dodgers have fired Shohei Ohtani's translator, Ippei Mizuhara, amid allegations of massive theft. It has taken social media by storm. There's been theories running all over the place, so let's not waste any time, as we've got an absolute ton to get through with this topic. Let's not waste any time, and let's talk baseball.
The man and Bobby fella, the scooter, the barber and the nuke. They knew 'em all from Boston.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be listening. This is Let's Talk Baseball. I'm your host, Tom Scholes, and goodness gracious me, what a time it was last night. Not in a good way. Let's just preface this out now. It wasn't a good thing what these reports were coming out with. A man has just lost his job. But the Dodgers have fired Shohei Ohtani's interpreter amid allegations of massive threat, according to a report from ESPN. Ippei Mizuhara, who's been a childhood friend, a long-time interpreter for Shohei Ohtani, has apparently incurred the gambling debts to a Southern Californian bookmaking operation that is under federal investigation. After questions surrounding at least $4.5 million in wire transfers sent from Ohtani's bank accounts to a bookmaking operation set off a series of events. Now, as is what happens with these events, they break on social media, they break on Twitter first, and it kind of takes a mind of its own. The thing is with this on like social media and everything like that, it takes a mind of its own. It runs on its own accord. People see one thing, they take a little bit of it and they run with it. So there's going to be a lot of theories out there that people have suggested, people have dived into, that just aren't true. And, can't really discuss them. We can't come on here and say what some people are thinking about the involvement of certain people within this organisation, within this operation. Initially, a spokesman for Ohtani told ESPN the slugger had transferred the funds to cover Mizuhara's gambling debt. The spokesman presented Mizuhara to ESPN for a 90-minute interview on Tuesday night, during which Mizuhara laid out his account in great detail. However, as ESPN prepared to publish the story on Wednesday, the spokesman disavowed Mizuhara's account and said Ohtani's lawyers would be issuing a statement. In the course of responding to recent media inquiries, we discovered that Shohei has been a victim of a massive theft, and we are turning the matter over to the authorities, read the statement from Burke Brettler, LLP. The spokesman declined to answer any further questions, and the statement did not specify whom they believed perpetrated the alleged theft. That is where a lot of the questions and a lot of the theories have come from. If you go onto Twitter, or X, if people insist on calling it that, and you type in Ohtani, there are people making memes about it. There are people saying, oh, he's like one of us. The only thing Shohei Ohtani bets on is himself. All of this kind of stuff. And let's just put it out there, I don't believe that Shohei Ohtani has been gambling on baseball. I don't believe he's been affecting the outcomes of games. He's too good to have done that on purpose. And if people do think he's affected the outcome of a game, there is no proof of that. And if you point towards any proof of that, he did play for the Angels, who were bad. So if a 7-run lead disappeared out of nowhere, it wasn't anything dodgy. It was just the Angels. And let's be honest. This is a man who has done a lot of things in private. He has managed to keep a lot of things under wraps. He kept his relationship with his wife under wraps, He came out and said she is a normal person when it turns out she's a basketball player in Japan and fairly popular. It also is things like his entire free agency. No one knew what was going on. That was under wraps. And there's a lot of people who are saying things like, there's no way he didn't know. Well, if they suspended Pete Rose, they've got to suspend Ohtani, and they jump into conclusions. And it's like, let's just take it one step at a time, okay? There's nothing to suggest that Shohei Ohtani has been involved in any of this. There's nothing to suggest Shohei Ohtani's done anything wrong. And yes, I'm a Shohei Ohtani fan. I'm a massive fan of the player he is and everything like that. So there's a rough timeline about what's actually happened with the Ohtani incident. Ohtani's rep goes on the record with the ESPN stating Ohtani transferred him $4.5 million himself to a bookmaker on behalf of Ippei. Spokesman for Ohtani delivers Ippei to ESPN for a statement. Ippei says Ohtani never bet and felt bad for him and paid off his debt, so he'd never do it again. Spokesperson for Ohtani says Ippei is lying after giving his 90-minute statement to ESPN. Ohtani's lawyers claim massive theft. Ippei then says Ohtani had zero knowledge of his debt and his gambling habits in general. And then someone else has come up with a synopsis about what happened for the Ohtani. Just a quick rundown of what's going on. Ohtani's name comes up in a federal investigation. Ohtani's team says Shohei transferred the money to a bookkeeper to pay Ippei's debts. Ohtani's team sends Ippei to ESPN, states Ohtani never gambled. Shohei felt bad for him, so paid off his debt. Ohtani's team says Ippei is lying. There has been a massive theft. Ohtani and Ippei partake in Seoul Series game yesterday morning, as you're listening to this, or as I'm recording this. Ippei tells ESPN that Shohei had no knowledge of his gambling debts. He never bet on baseball. Yep. Ippei addressed the team in the clubhouse, says story will come out that it is all his fault. Remember, he was in the dugout laughing and grabbing tush an hour beforehand. Ippei is then fired from the Dodgers. Now, there's a lot to dive into with that, and there's a lot to discuss with it. There's a lot to figure out what the truth is and figure out what's going on. The crux of the information is we're not going to hear the end of this, and we're not going to hear the last of this, and that Major League Baseball has a bad situation on its hands here. Because if, and I stress this as a big if Shohei Ohtani is involved in gambling, and if Shohei Ohtani has been betting on games that maybe games he's not even involved with, games of someone else, or different sports, we don't know what he's been gambling on. We don't know, or if he has even been gambling. We don't know what's gone on here. We don't know what Ippei's been betting on. We don't know who on the behalf he's betting on. We don't even know if it's Shohei he's betting on behalf of, all this kind of thing. But Major League Baseball's biggest worldwide star has now had his name involved in a betting scandal. Doesn't matter what context it's in. It doesn't matter whether Shohei has done anything or nothing. Shohei is involved with this. There were cameras at him during the game. There was cameras at him. Game 2 is just about to start now. And as I was scrolling through Twitter to find information out about this more, there's been articles posted by Sky News, BBC News, people that don't normally cover baseball, with the headlines surrounding Shohei. Shohei's pictures on the front cover. He is the star of the story, even though his name has just been mentioned. Why it's also bad for Major League Baseball is if it transpires that he has done a form of gambling whilst being a player, they will have no other option but to suspend him. They will have no other option but to Pete Rose him for life. And nobody wants to see that happen unless you're a Giants or a Padres fan, for obvious reasons. But the game's biggest star, worldwide, is embroiled in a betting scandal that he may or may not have done anything in. Very keen to stress this. At the time of recording, the time is 10:03 in the morning on Thursday, 21st of March. He has not been involved in any kind of bet being placed or anything like that. The stories between Ippei and the spokespeople and the lawyers and the representatives of Ohtani are very different. And there are people making a lot of accusations around here about what's going on. The fact of the matter is, no one really knows what's happened. No one really knows what's going on. But if that was to happen, I dread to think. I really dread to think what would happen. Because it would possibly be, I wouldn't say the biggest scandal ever in baseball. Wouldn't say that. It'd be the biggest one since the steroids, by far. Some people would even go as far as saying it is bigger than steroids. I don't think it is. You know, that was pretty bad. That was pretty bad. But you know, I was just reading in preparation for this. I was just reading up about Pete Rose and his suspension and what happened when he was there. Amid reports that he had bet on baseball, Rose was informally questioned in February 1989. With his lawyer present, Rose stated that he had bet on football, basketball, and horse racing, but vehemently denied the allegations of betting on baseball. Now, that was part one. Sports Illustrated gave the public their first detailed report of the allegations that Rose had placed bets on baseball games on March 21st, 1989. In the cover story of the issue dated April 3rd, 1989. August 24th, 1989, Rose voluntarily accepted a permanent place on baseball's ineligible list. He accepted that there were factual reason for the ban. In return, MLB agreed to make no formal finding with regard to gambling allegations. According to baseball rules, Rose could apply for reinstatement in 1 year, but they said there is absolutely no deal for reinstatement. This is exactly what we did not agree to in terms of a fixed number of years. There was no evidence. No evidence was discovered that Rose bet against his Cincinnati Reds team he was managing. But it's irrelevant at that point. If you bet on the games, that's it. But he was voluntarily suspended for life. Whether they would do the same with Shohei, if anything was to happen, I don't know. I really don't. I really doubt it as well, to be perfectly honest. But this then opens up another line of talking that I think is very important. I look at this whole situation and just think to myself, yes, there might be a problem with betting in sports. Certainly in America. Now that gambling is legalized in a lot of states, it's going to become a very dangerous situation very quickly for American sports and, for the sake of this conversation, Major League Baseball. I personally am not a fan of the lengths that are being gone to by these betting companies to put odds out and encourage people to bet in many different ways. And, if people want to bet, that's entirely up to them. If they bet in a healthy manner, if they bet in a way that is financially sound and not ridiculous, then that's one thing. That is a situation that, if you have it under control and you're able to put a $10 bet on every week, let's say, that's up to you. Or a $5 bet every day for a week, as an example. But having been to America in the past couple of years, where gambling and sports books have been legalized, the change has been quick and the change has been rapid. It's something that I'm not entirely comfortable with. I have, again, stressed the fact I have no problem with gambling. I have no problem with betting. When we were in Vegas for the Super Bowl, I put a bet on who would win Super Bowl MVP. We all did. None of us won, but we all gave it a go. It is what it is. It's not the end of the world if you put one bet on. But if you are encouraged time and time and time and time again to put more and more and more money on, that's where the problem, in my opinion, begins. If you're encouraged by an app, by an advert, by radio adverts, by television adverts, by pop-ups on screen with odds on the ticker of MLB Network when they're discussing a potential betting scandal, that's one thing. That's where the problem, in my opinion, begins. Because it's only going to get worse. And off the top of my head, I think, what is it, 40 states in the United States have legalized gambling, legalized sports gambling. And the betting apps have had a field day with them. BetMGM have gone in there and they've had Chris Rock do adverts, they've had Kevin Hart do adverts, all this kind of thing. And the idea is to get you to do more and more and more. And if you're a British fan watching this or listening to this or whatever, you'll understand what it's like to see Paddy Power everywhere. You can't watch the NFL without 888 being all over it. Oh, I've done work for 888. And there are different levels to this. There are different levels to what responsibility they have. They have to advertise. They have to promote themselves, just like any business would. They can't stop people, really, if they want to have a bet. But specifically in America, the way in which it has taken over a lot of broadcasts and a lot of how people view the sports is quite dangerous. And it's only going to get worse because more and more people are going to get involved with it, and they've realised how much money they make from it. You see, every show now, it seems, will have odds of something. Maybe they won't specifically mention it by mouth, but there'll be odds somewhere. You watch an NBA game, and I saw a report the other day that they're going to trial. You can have something like odds flash up on your screen if you watch it at a certain time, and if you watch it on a phone or something along those lines, the odds will be able to pop up and you can watch them and you can bet that way. And you can see in-game odds instantly. That's a different level. That's not on. Because if you're watching the game and you just want to watch the game, that's one thing. If you watch the game and then decide to go onto a different app to bet, that is on your own accord. You shouldn't have it pushed upon you. You shouldn't have it forced upon you. It's not fair what they're doing to people who have the addiction of gambling, where it is everywhere and it's going to be everywhere. Whereas before you'd go to Vegas and you'd put some bets on and all that kind of stuff. Now it's so accessible. It's so easy to do it now that it's like, should you? Should you really be pushing it this way? Bet if you want to bet. Have your organisations, of course. There's nothing wrong with putting a $5 on or a $10 on if you want. We've just had Cheltenham here in England. People bet there. I'm sure people lost a lot of money, but people won a lot of money. And you can have all your ads about responsible betting that you want, but pushing them during NBA games, we'll probably see them during the baseball games this summer. It's gonna be hard to look away, and it's gonna be hard to see how these things aren't linked. But that being said, you just have to sit and wait for more news about the Shohei Ohtani situation, because I genuinely don't know what happens next. It really is odd. We just got to wait and see. I think a lot of people are questioning the validity of what's happened, and they want questions, they want answers from it. But we've just got to wait and see. I hope Shohei has nothing to do with this. I love watching him play. I think he's great for the game. I think he's great for the sport worldwide. And if Ipe did have a gambling problem and a gambling addiction, and Shohei wanted to help and pay off his debts, I hope that's the extent of it. I hope Ipe gets the best help he can to help him with this situation, and I hope it springboard Major League Baseball and potentially American sports into looking at how they operate with betting, and maybe look to clamp down on certain bits about it. That being said, we've had a problem here in the Premier League with Ivan Toney, who was banned for betting retrospectively. And he's come back to Brentford and is playing in a shirt sponsored by Hollywood Bets. So I wouldn't be surprised if nothing comes of this and nothing is learned from any of these situations. That being said, this has only been a short video to kind of discuss what's happened and get thoughts off my chest about betting in sports and everything along those lines. So if you're listening to the audio version, there's going to be a very specific song playing for this one. But if you're watching, thank you for watching. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and just have a good day.